Due to the explanations of the ontological insights presented, the viewer may find this video to be somewhat abstract. Conceptual elasticity is advised. Namaste, and welcome to this applied Jainism presentation entitled My name is Balabhadra. This video, part 1 of 3, is a basic introduction to the Jain view of reality and the logic explaining that view. This knowledge is presented at the ontological level. Ontology, the study of being. 1. A branch of metaphysics concerned with the nature and relations of being. 2. A particular theory about the nature of being or the kinds of things that have existence. There is much more to the Jain view of reality than is possible to present in one video. My presentation of this topic will be divided into 3 videos. Part 1, Supportive Reasoning, the logical reasoning explaining this Jaina view of reality. Part 2, Qualified Assertion, how to make statements in a relativistic reality. Part 3, Knowledge is Power, how this knowledge of reality is relevant and important to you. Also, as the subject matter is the vast wonder we call reality, you may expect the explanation would mean a lot of philosophical complexity. While there is some complexity, my intention is to present the essential insights while providing an accurate overview. There are 2 primary references for this video. My University of Toronto PhD thesis, presented in my book, Applied Jainism, and the Oxford University PhD thesis, A Comparative Study of Jaina Theories of Reality and Knowledge by Y.J. Padmarajah, which was a primary resource for my thesis. The Jain term for non-one-sidedness in Sanskrit is anekantavad, non-one-sided view. Padmarajah states that Jain anekantavad is the most consistent form of realism, and that reality is a complex web of manyness and manifoldness. Anekantavad has 2 additional parts, which are noted here briefly. Nyavad, the method of standpoints, and Shyadvad, the method of conditional predication. Their relevance is outlined in video part 2. Commenting on reality at the ontological level is not restricted to Jainism. Throughout history, in both the Western and the Eastern traditions, the nature of reality at the ontological level has been the subject of philosophical reflection and debate. A continuous line of understanding is that reality has 2 basic opposing characteristics: permanence and change. It will be shown that these 2 characteristics represent one example of a basic relationship between 2 opposing elements that pervades all of reality. It is important to understand for logical discerning that the 2 elements are separate in their occurrence. For example, Permanence means something is absolutely permanent and does not change, and change means something is continuously changing and cannot be permanent, meaning both are separate and independent. And yet the two will be shown to be in a relationship. Two independent opposites in relationship. How can this be? Duality. As hinted at by the word dual within it, duality refers to having two parts, often with opposite meanings, like the duality of good and evil. For example, if there are two sides to a coin, metaphorically speaking, there's a duality. Peace and war, love and hate, up and down, and black and white are dualities. These two opposites result in a duality, which is an irresolvable contradiction, and thus are not sufficient to fully explain reality. As we will see from the unique insight of Jain philosophy, the two actually interrelate and make three, in that permanence can relate with change to become permanence and change. This video provides a logic underlying the Jain view, resolving what appears to be a contradiction. Now let's get started. An introduction to the logic underlying the Jain non-one-sided view begins here with two of the earliest Western thinkers. In the West, for example, the pre-Socratic Greek philosopher Heraclitus maintained that change was the fundamental characteristic of the reality of an overall single unity. From his view, everything is always passing into its opposite. For Heraclitus, reality is a changeable substance comprised of a tension of opposing forces. The fragments of Heraclitus also indicate his assessment that reality exhibited a paradoxical characteristic. Paradox. 1. A statement or situation that may be true but seems impossible or difficult to understand because it contains two opposite facts or characteristics. 2. A seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that when investigated or explained may prove to be well-founded or true. Heraclitus felt fire to be the nature of reality. Fire is a phenomenon that is ever-changing while maintaining its unity. What is perceived as the many is due to the strife of opposites, for example, permanence and change, which ultimately act in harmony or attunement to constitute the unity of the one. Parmenides. In contrast, the fragments attributed to the pre-Socratic Greek philosopher Parmenides, thought to have flourished around about 470 BC, indicate arguments adhering to a permanence view. Parmenides argues, what is, as there is no such thing as nothing, it cannot be created from nothing. Therefore, it must be uncreated, indestructible, and immovable. This view has also been expressed as, out of nothing, nothing comes. Nothing means nothing. Our own reasoning recognizes something cannot be created from nothing. Permanence also occurs because something cannot come from something, as there is no empty space for it to arise, as empty space would imply nothing. Before continuing with the Jain resolution to the issue of contradiction of opposites, an understanding of the importance of the meaning of words and their concepts for logical thinking needs to be emphasized. For example, the meaning of absolute. Absolute means a total, unadulterated state. Change means absolutely, totally changing, and permanence means absolutely, totally permanent. Other examples: pure means totally, absolutely pure. All means totally, absolutely, 100% all. Independent means totally, absolutely independent, and on and on. For Heraclitus, change was the absolute total characteristic of reality. For Parmenides, permanence was the absolute total characteristic of reality. The two conflicting views present two important logical insights. First, both of these thinkers were commenting on the same phenomenon, in this instance, reality. The insight is, for the tension of opposites and for a logical contradiction to happen, the tension and contradiction must be occurring with the same phenomenon. A contradiction can occur between absolute permanence and absolute change because the insights are regarding the same phenomenon, which is reality. A tension and contradiction can occur between absolute hot and absolute cold because the phenomenon in common is temperature. Second, logic leads to the conclusion that for tension to occur, there must be a relationship between the two opposing characteristics of the same phenomenon. Without a shared commonality, there can be no tension. Shared commonality requires relationship. The insight of Heraclitus identifies a tension of opposites. Logically, for things to be opposite, they must be in a relationship. Opposing indicates relationship. Conflicting indicates opposing, that is, being what it is, opposing what it is not. Jainism resolves the problem of duality by recognizing that reality consists of a third characteristic. Jainism acknowledges the difficult to conceptualize occurrence of a relationship between the two opposites. How the relationship exists brings forth the reality of relativity. There is a need at this point to explain the meaning of relativity and relativistic with regard to Onesided. Here is a common understanding of relativism. Relativism. Relativism is the idea that views are relative to differences in perception and consideration. There is no universal objective truth according to relativism. Rather, each point of view has its own truth. For example, truth relativism is the doctrine that there are no absolute truths. That is, that truth is always relative to some particular frame of reference, such as a language or a culture. Cultural relativism. For Jainism, it is reality that is relative, in that the six substances that constitute reality exist and function relative to one another. Jainism is absolutist in that anekantavad, while a theory is an absolute understanding of the nature of reality. There are two aspects to anekantavad reality. One, an explanation of the reality and its abstractness, as outlined in this video, and two, how to make a statement regarding reality, considering reality is relativistic. This is the topic of the second video, part 2. Supportive reasoning. It is the unique Jain view that permanence and change can exist as independent elements in a relationship of equal strength if a third element of equal strength also exists as a mediating phenomenon. As there are only two principal elements, the third element would need to consist of both permanence and change. The mediating aspect needs to be equal in significance for it to have the strength to mediate and exist between the two elements. That is, greater strength in the mediating element would dominate the other two. Lesser strength and the mediating element would be dominated and made subordinate and ineffective. Thus, it is reasoned that the new relationship of the elements constituting a phenomenon would consist of three aspects: permanence, permanence-and-change, and change. This is the paradox. They exist simultaneously as three independent entities, as well as one interdependent entity. The unique contribution by the Jain philosophy to these ontological theories of reality is its recognition and logical reasoning supporting a third aspect of equal strength that exists as a mediating phenomenon. That incomprehensible aspect of reality where the two independent opposing elements exist in a relationship. Jainism recognizes and formulates this paradoxical aspect of reality. Thus, Jainism views ontological reality not as a two-element dynamic, but as a three-element trinamic. This threefold aspect of two fundamental and so-called opposing elements is clearly observable in our lives. Take, for example, a common coin. It has a front side and an opposite back side. However, for the coin to exist, it must also have a third side, what is called an edge, which in a sense creates a paradox. That is, the third side joins the two opposites, while at the same time separates them. The third side also permits the two elements to retain their equal independence. Thus, the third side both separates and connects, revealing the paradoxical nature of reality. In addition, the edge is entirely neither element. It is to some extent both, and to some extent neither. It represents the permanence of one side while changing to the permanent other side. Thus, the nature of the edge, that is, the third aspect, also can be described as permanence and change, while the third side as an element in the threefold nature of reality of an existent is permanent. It, at the same time, represents the relationship factor that is of the nature of change, due to the fluctuating degree of manifestation or activeness of the two elements. Manifestation. 1. A perceptible, outward, or visible expression. 2. One of the forms that something has when it appears or occurs. 3. The act or sign of showing clearly. Manifestation here means, depending upon the degree of presence or dominance, this element will, by degree, be dominant. And depending upon the degree of presence or dominance, this element will, by degree, be dominant. It is like a mysterious fluctuating system that can change and waver between the two absolutes. The description of the nature of reality, as developed here, is a permanent universe in a state of change. For Jainism, reality also consists of permanent so-called reals, or in Jain terminology, substances, that, as a part of their essential constitution, are in a state of change. The 6 reals are soul, matter, motion, rest, space, and time. As the universe is of the nature of permanence and change, so also the individual reals of which the universe is comprised must themselves be of the structure of permanence and change. According to Jainism, to qualify as a real, something that exists must consist of these 3 elements. This means that reality in general, the cosmos, and the reals of which it is constituted, are of the nature of permanence, and change, and change. These 6 reals exist independently, yet in a relationship of interdependent interaction to form and underlie reality, and what we can begin to understand as the most consistent form of reality. Obviously, reality exists, and as shown by the ontological thinkers, reality has a characteristic functioning. We are part of reality and cannot avoid the effect of its functioning. Understanding the nature of reality as presented at this basic level allows us to be precise in our view and reactions. The next video, part 2, provides further explanation of this unique reality arrangement and the difficulty we have in expressing its relativistic nature. The explanation includes how to make statements in such a reality. Namaste. I bow to your eternal, everlasting energy with consciousness soul, the real you.